All right, thank y'all for being here today. We are the Wildcats DIAs, and today we're going to be talking to you about the ripple effects of health neglect, how our daily choices affect us today. So before we get started, just introducing ourselves again, we are second year doctoral PT students. We are the Wildcats DIAs, and we're going to tell you a fun fact about ourselves. So my name is Vita. And what you see listed under each of our names is our favorite places we've visited in the US. So my favorite place was Portland, Oregon. I think it was like the first time I got to do real hiking. They have a lot of waterfalls. I got to do a tour of Montanoma Falls and a bunch of other waterfalls. And super nice, super scenic. I got to take a lot of great pictures.
All right, and I'll go next. So again, my name is Brandon Ross. My favorite place was actually Los Angeles, California. One, because I haven't been to the West Coast before, so that was pretty cool. I love Santa Monica Beach. I love the Hollywood Walk, everything about it. The Hollywood sign, everything was cool. Most importantly, they had churro ice cream. Churro ice cream, yes, that hit the spot. So by far, that was my deciding factor.
My name is Samantha Hatcher, and my favorite town or city in the United States is actually a place called Ridgway, Colorado, not well known. It is between essentially like Ouray and Telluride area, small, nice, cute, quaint little mountain town. We go to the mountains to get away. That's where I reset. And this picture was actually taken just outside there in Ouray, Colorado. We did a big trip out there and did a lot of rock climbing, and we did some canyoneering, and we get into all kinds of fun stuff out there. We went ice climbing one time. So yeah, beautiful, beautiful part of the country. So if you guys want to put in the chat real quick, just as an icebreaker, like where your favorite town or city is, we'd love to see it.
Oh, nice, San Francisco. Breckenridge. Idlewild, California. All right. Well, thanks for sharing. Oh, Venice.
Oh, Dr. Bezer with 3.
Okay.
Santa Fe. I want to go. Okay, so gonna do a quick overview of what we're going to be discussing today. The first thing we're going to talk about is the health choices that when we say how our health choices affect us daily, we're going to break down what those health choices are. Next, we're going to recap from the presentation we did a couple months ago of what the positive long-term effects of physical activity are, going into how our daily choices impact us day to day, and then taking a deeper look into exercise, how exercise improves our daily function, and then we'll finish off with a Q&A. So the main health choices that we're talking about is how often we're moving, how we're feeling our body, how we're allowing our brain to recover, and what kind of sleep we get. So this is essentially our physical activity, our exercise, our nutrition, our diet, how we're rejuvenating ourselves, and then the kind of quality sleep that we're getting. So to recap from the presentation we did a few months ago, these are the positive long-term effects of physical activity. So these are more commonly what we're told. We can decrease our risk of coronary artery disease and stroke, decrease our blood pressure and cholesterol levels, lower our risk of diabetes or other cancers, reduce depression, anxiety, improve our cognitive function. So all of these things are long-term effects from physical activity. As we do activity, our heart works more efficiently, allowing us to get oxygen and blood flow to our brain, helping us to have these positive long-term effects. And so, again, if you missed that presentation, you can find all the old WES presentations on the Wildcats website under the Education and Research tab.
All right, so yeah, I get it. I've heard this before, but that's a problem for future me, right? That's an excuse that mostly everyone says, but no, you cannot have that mindset at all. you have to start where you have to train your discipline as soon as possible, meaning today. So Sam found this lovely quote. So take care of your body with steadfast fidelity. The soul must see through these eyes alone, and if they are dim, the whole world is clouded. So basically, our health decisions that we make each day have a direct impact on like how we're gonna live in this world. So you also want to ask yourself, are you setting yourself up for failure or for success? And basically, if we're not really taking care of our bodies now, what's going to happen in the future? You know what I mean? We're going to set ourselves up for failure. So, for example, our first semester in class, we learned about diabetes. And one of our professors gave a compelling lecture on how you can ultimately prevent it, especially if it's not, you know, really, if it's not hereditary or anything. And she really brought up a good point saying, if you're going to the doctor now and you notice that your A1C is a little higher than, you know, average or normal, why not take the necessary steps to, you know, prevent you from passing the pre-diabetic levels and reaching the diabetic levels? So I really thought to myself, wow, I definitely don't want to get diabetes once I'm older, and I don't want to risk necrosis and end up losing a limb, especially if I have control over my health now. So I took the necessary steps to, you know, improve my diet. So I limit my sugar, and yeah, things have just been great. So again, I've decided to make that change after that lecture, and you know, we hope for you to do the same thing. Okay, so how can poor health choices show up in your life? So these are just some examples that we've listed. So decreased ability to handle stressors or manage emotions, loss of motivation or enjoyment, anxiety, depression, or irritability symptoms. So regarding cognition, decrease in productivity, focus, and problem solving, strained personal or professional relationships, and chronic fatigue. So I'm just going to touch on chronic fatigue very quickly because I remember Dr. Besser telling us our first summer semester here, make sure you get your sleep. You know, everyone looked at her like, you know, we're not going to have time to go to sleep because we have to study. But honestly, it really made a difference. Like literally shutting off your laptop around 9 p.m., getting a full 7 to 9 hours of sleep is ideal because it's going to prepare you for the very next day. And, you know, you won't feel irritable, you won't feel groggy, and you'll be more productive throughout your day. So Dr. Besser, definitely thank you for that. Okay, now we're going to open up floor. So what are some of the recurring challenges you face or, you know, experience in your day-to-day life? So you can put those in the chat. And if you're kind of wondering how to answer this, you know, so an example would be lack of patience, you know, inability to focus, strained relationships, etc. So things of that nature.
Another common one would be like fatigue, like if you feel like you just wake up and you just can't quite get energized every day, like if that's a common challenge, just kind of brainstorming to see like, is there these little nagging things that are happening for you every day? And then from there, we'll kind of ask a deeper question. Okay, so yeah, it looks like stress, a lot of responsibilities, a lot of things on your plate, lack of sleep, that's a big one. Sleep issues, yep, common. It seems like kind of stress and sleep is a big one for this group.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so secondly, how might these challenges be related to health choices or improve with better health choices? So once again, how might these challenges be related to health choices or improve with better health choices?
And this is something too, like, you know, you can reflect on this kind of as we're going through this presentation. This will kind of lead into where we're going. But, you know, start to reflect on days I feel really tired. Did I also eat? not great the week before, the day before, that day? Did I not sleep well on the days that I feel especially tired or especially irritable? Maybe was my sleep not great? Did I, again, eat something that maybe isn't as healthy as I should have been eating or something like that? So just kind of start to reflect on those things. So thank you for sharing. Now that we kind of got the brain juices going, so we'll kind of dive right in here. So Brandon talked about how poor health choices can show up in our life, and it relates a lot to stress management. Was a common thing that came up. So what's really cool to see, and what is in the research, is that really making these positive health choices every day, it shows up in your day-to-day life. It's not just something that's going to show up years down the road in a chronic disease. These things will show up, within hours sometimes, if it's something you ate, or if you had a stressful event happen, and you weren't taking care of your health, how you manage that stressful event. So really the big way that positive health choices show up in your life is they directly impact your brain and your brain function. I think as a whole, we don't really appreciate how connected the human body is. We think, oh, the brain's all the way up here and our body's all the way down here, so they're not really doing anything together. But everything that we eat, everything that our brain is exposed to in a day, the exercise that we get, the blood flow, it's all related, and it all plays into how our brain is functioning. So all of these things are going to help to optimize how your brain is functioning in a day. If your brain is fully optimized, you're going to be able to think better. You're going to be able to process things better. You're going to show up better. You're going to be less irritable. And all of these things have ripple effects in your life. So we'll go through, this is sort of our summary slide. We're going to start big picture, think 10,000 foot view. We're going to come in for this presentation and really hone in on more physical activity and exercise, just because that's our wheelhouse. But know that the WellCats has extremely great resources for especially nutrition. Their Instagram is full of really great nutrition ideas. They've had great presentations in the past that you can reference. So know that that's why we're not kind of diving more into the nutrition route. And for sake of time, this could be a 10-hour lecture if we really wanted it to be. We knew you didn't want to stay here for 10 hours. So we're going to try to cut this into things that are really takeaways that you can use moving forward. So that's why you're going to see us kind of dive more into the exercise piece. But big picture here. So a whole foods diet, for those of you that aren't familiar, a whole foods diet would be considered to be eating things that are minimally processed and as close to their natural state as possible. So we're talking about anything that is naturally occurring. We're talking about, decreasing things that come in a box, decreasing things that are processed, decreasing, high fructose corn syrup, white sugar, all that fun stuff. So if we're eating a predominantly whole foods diet, what the research has shown is this actually does promote improved cognition and improved memory. As well, it also promotes a healthier gut microbiota or microbiome, and that actually helps to regulate our stress response, our mood, and also, interesting, our immune system. There's a really interesting book, if this is something that you are interested in and want to learn more about, called the Mind-Gut Connection. They get into this and talk about the current research that's coming about the microbiome. And for anybody that's not aware of the microbiome, it's essentially they're calling it almost another organ system or another kind of body system, because it has such a huge impact on the body. But essentially, it's like the good bacteria that houses, or the bacteria that's kind of housed in our gut. If we're eating a diet that's super acidic and super full of processed foods, the ratios of the good bacteria to bad bacteria kind of favors the bad bacteria, and that has a direct impact on brain health. In that book, they actually talk about how there's ties to potentially neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia. Whereas the flip side of that is if we have a really well-balanced gut microbiome, it has really positive impacts on our brain and our brain health, and protecting our brain in the future from degenerative diseases. So really fascinating topic. I could go on a whole spiel about that, but we'll save that for the nutrition department. So we have our whole foods diet, and then meditation. So I know when the word meditation comes up, people usually roll their eyes. I don't have time for that. I can't sit and, sing Kumbaya for an hour. And that's not what meditation's about, right? There's actually really great meditation apps now or you can choose a 10-minute meditation, a 5-minute meditation. The point of this is really talking about times to unplug. We are always in front of screens all day, every day now. We are always stimulated. We are always on. Emails are always popping in. Texts are always popping in. We don't give ourselves time to unplug. In a TED talk I was listening to, she talks about, we don't allow ourselves to be bored anymore. We don't allow ourselves just to sit in stillness anymore. If you're at the grocery store, look around you, how many people are pulling out their phone in line? If you're at an airport, same thing. If you're kind of sitting in line, you're instantly going to pull out your phone, check the news, check your email, instead of just standing in line and being okay with standing in line and people watching and just looking at your environment. We don't allow ourselves that brain time, that downtime to be bored. And the research has actually shown, which is really interesting, is if you allow yourself that downtime, it actually helps with problem solving and increases your productivity, because there's a part of your brain and kind of subconsciously that's allowed to turn on and actually work through problems that maybe you've been trying to work through. And so you allow that part of your brain to actually start working when you just give your brain that time, that kind of break. Quality sleep, we kind of touched on this already. So research is showing, and it's a little different depending on what you read, but about 7 hours of quality sleep, quality being the key word on that sentence, can improve, again, mood regulation, stress regulation, and cognitive function. I think that's probably the hardest part for new parents, anybody that is a parent in the room. If you have a baby, when you have a little baby, you're not getting sleep, and you see new parents are irritable and they're moody and they're tired. And a lot of that has to do, honestly, with sleep deprivation. So sleep is huge, and quality sleep is huge for how you show up in the day. And then physical activity, we'll dive deeper into these. So I'll just shallowly touch on these and then we'll kind of do a deeper dive. So physical activity, interestingly, can improve your stress response. And then it's also been shown to decrease anxiety and depressive symptoms. All right, so there was a really interesting study done out of Finland, and they put together this sort of mind map, if you will, this schema, and this was meant to basically show 3 predominant areas that they see that exercise or fitness, physical activity has an impact on. So this, like I said, this is kind of our deeper dive and our focus in on specifically the physical activity piece. So the first thing we're going to introduce is the direct impact on health and well-being. I think you'll notice that this is the common one. This is the one that people most associate with physical activity, which Abida will get into. And then we'll talk about actually its role in managing stress and managing stressful events, and then also the role in personal and also social resources. So we'll kind of talk more about that.
All right, so the first one we're going to get into is exercise and its effect on health and well-being. So just going back to the map that Sam was discussing, all of those components affect each other. And so it's not just, this is the direct link, but there are also interrelations between all of those different components. Okay, so the first thing we're going to discuss is bone density. So bone density, our increase in bone density allows us to reduce our risk for osteoporosis. So when we're weight bearing, we stress our bones and we build up that bone density. And so although that's not something that we can literally see an effect on, it's something that's happening, and it's something that's important for us to literally function every day. And so that's one direct effect that, even though we may not see it until like we get a DEXA scan or something, that's going to literally show us that it's having an effect on our day-to-day lives already. The next thing is strength. So strength can improve our daily function. And so for novices starting to exercise, they start to see gains in about 6 to 8 weeks. And so that is typically neurological gains. And that means that our muscles are adapting and learning during this time. So as we move, they're learning, and they're learning from those movements that we're doing. And then after that, we start to see more actual muscle gains. And so although most of us probably aren't lifting like a crazy amount every day, we still need strength to do our daily activities. So that's just getting out of bed, or having good posture, getting to work, being able to drive. getting our groceries, holding our kids, all the things that we do in our day require us to have strength. And then sleep quality, which has been touched on already. Our exercise affects our sleep quality, and our sleep quality affects our exercise. And so that allows us to fall asleep faster, allows us to have more energy during the day. So poor sleep quality is gonna, with like less energy during the day, we're gonna be less inclined to do things. And so that's gonna kind of get us in that cycle of being like, okay, well, I already don't have energy, so I'm not gonna exercise, or I'm not gonna do these other things. And then we're not doing those things, we're decreasing our energy, we're staying up on our phones, our computers longer, and then we're getting worse sleep quality. So when we do exercise, we get better sleep quality. When we get sleep quality, we have that energy to exercise. And the next thing is a mood boost. So exercise releases those feel-good hormones, our endorphins and our serotonin, and allows us to have improved energy throughout our day. And so this is gonna affect, a lot of things. Like this affects, like we talked about with sleep, and then affects our interactions with other people and just our ability to want to do things together. And the next effect is cognitive benefits. So exercise can improve our memory and reduce our risk for Alzheimer's and dementia. And so as we exercise, we increase our heart rate and promote the flow of blood and oxygen to our brains, helping us to get those cognitive benefits. And the last thing is building community. So thinking back again to our prior presentation, we talked a little bit about how we can do exercise in community, and then that helps to widen our circle, and that helps our cognitive benefits, which Sam is going to get into a bit more in a little bit.
Okay, so we addressed the first box, kind of this direct effect on health, which I think, like I said, is sort of the most common way that people associate exercise being a benefit. They're like, oh yeah, it's good for my heart. I know that. I know it's good for general health. But now we're getting into these other two realms where I think maybe it's lesser known that exercise and literally just some of these positive health decisions we talked about earlier have an effect on. And this gets more into like brain function, which is really fascinating. So the second box we're going to talk about, if you remember from our little mind map, is the one about a stressful event or handling stress. So they talk about there's two effects that exercise can have on this, or physical activity can have on this. So there's a preventative effect, and then there's a buffering effect. So preventative being before a stressful event's already happened, and then buffering effect meaning something stressful has happened. How is it helping you to get through the stressful event? So first we'll talk about the preventative effect. So preventive effect would be, for example, the research is showing that aerobic exercise can actually improve your attention, your processing speed, your memory, as well as your executive functions. Executive functions would just be things that you're doing, such as decision making and problem solving in a day. So essentially what's happening is that the proposed mechanism, there's a lot of proposed reasons why this is the case. One of which is that exercise is tied to decreased inflammation and decreased inflammatory processes. Less inflammation in your brain means that your brain is functioning better, which leads to better cognitive function, which all these are tied to. I bring that up because although we're not doing a deeper dive into the nutrition and the sleep and the meditation, those three things also decrease inflammation. And so if we're decreasing inflammation and we're doing all the things we can to decrease inflammation in the brain, then that's going to promote better cognitive function in general. So just kind of keep that in mind. Yes, we're talking about our, moving more right now, but if we're decreasing inflammation with these other things, that's just setting us even more up for success. So there's also really interesting research about how people that are exercising more and more physically active, they actually have rated their lives as less stress. Like they don't feel like they have as much stress in their lives. And then they've also rated their lives as having better increased life satisfaction, essentially. So if you're going through your life and you kind of think about, if my brain's working better, I'm processing things easier, I'm problem solving quicker, I'm probably going to be able to handle stressful things that are coming into my life way better than if I wasn't kind of optimized, right? So maybe a little thing happens, a little blip happens in my day, and if I hadn't slept well the night before, I ate a donut for breakfast, and I, haven't really gotten off my couch all weekend. Maybe that little blip for me would have been blown out of proportion, and it would have ruined my day and totally threw me off. Well, now I'm just kind of thrown off, and now I feel like my whole day was just awful. Whereas if I had shown up and had my 7 hours of quality sleep, I had a really great nutritious smoothie for breakfast, and I had a really fun weekend where I was out paddleboarding and doing stuff with my friends. Maybe that blip happens in my day, and it's like, all right, and I kind of handle it easier. It doesn't really throw me off my game. Well, I'm going to think about my day in a more positive light than that other person would have. So something to think about there. Just it changes your perceptions, which is really interesting. And then the buffering effect, which is really cool. So there's called a stress buffering effect during heightened times of stress. So let's say you're at work and you have a really stressful meeting. Maybe your boss called you out or caught you off guard and it really upset you, or you're just having a really stressful day. The research is actually showing that there's a physiological response that you have to stress. So you can start to feel your heart rate goes up. Your blood pressure starts to go up because your heart rate's gone up. You're pumping out more blood. You start to get hot. You start to sweat, right? So you're having this physiological response to stress. Well, if you just go out and take a walk, then just take a walk for 15, 20 minutes, you will actually downregulate your system, and your system kind of comes back down to baseline, and it resets your blood pressure, resets your heart rate, kind of manages those stress hormones that kind of created that cascade effect and put you into this stress response. So, this buffering effect can actually be very interesting. So if you are in a stressful time in your life, for us, kind of the main thing that comes to mind is like finals time. The irony is when life gets really busy and life gets really stressful, the first thing that we do is we tend to try to save time in places, and we cut out physical activity, or we cut out our exercise, and like, well, I'm going to save that hour and I really got to get this thing done. When the irony is that's probably the best thing we could do for ourselves in that moment. And so just keep that in mind as you go through. Like, it has a huge, huge impact on how you are managing your stress, not only preventatively, but also a buffering effect for if you are going through a stressful time. All right, so the next little bucket that we're going to talk about, our little third box, is related to sort of this personal and social well-being. So what's really interesting here is they talk about how exercise can strengthen these resources. And you can also have what's called, the research article describes as like a stress-induced loss of these resources. So stick with me here as we talk about this. So I get nerded out about it. It's very interesting. But so the first thing we'll talk about is motor competence. So motor competence is really interesting. Essentially, as you take on a new skill, in this case, let's say you are taking on paddleboarding and you've never paddleboarded before. First time you go paddleboarding, you're going to feel super awkward. Your balance is going to be off. Maybe you fall in the water a couple times. And then the next time you go out paddleboarding, you're going to notice like, oh, okay, my balance is feeling pretty good. I only fell once, like I'm feeling like I got this. And then you go out a third time, you take some friends out, and then they think you're a pro because you're like, balance is really good. You didn't fall in the water once. And so you are learning, your brain is learning how to stand on a paddleboard, how to manage the water coming underneath your board. And that's a motor competence. You're building that competence in this new skill. And that goes with anything that you do, right? So you could go to a gym for the first time. You could do a HIIT class for the first time. You could do yoga for the first time. You could ride a bike for the first time, whatever you want to do. You're going to start out really awkward. And then as your brain progresses, you're going to gain this competence in this new movement and this new skill. Research has shown that there's actually carryover. So if you, let's say, went to a new gym for the first time and you had a coach working with you and you started really learning about your body, really learning how to move, how to do a proper squat, how to move effectively and prevent injury. And you start noticing like, oh, I'm feeling a little bit stronger. Like I can do more than I used to. Like I didn't think I could pick up that 25-pound weight, and I did. And look at me go. You see this confidence actually ripple out into the rest of your life. So now all of a sudden you're at work and you're feeling a little more confident, and maybe you have more input in your meetings, or you have the confidence to maybe stick up for yourself more, or you have the confidence to say hi to someone new at the store or something. And this just sort of ripples out, right? And I've seen this firsthand as a personal trainer. We would have very quiet, people come into the gym and they're very unsure of being there. And it's a nerve-wracking setting. It's new people. And all of a sudden you start to see these really awesome changes and they start to realize, what their body can do. And you start to see how strong they are, that they didn't think they had this capability. And all of a sudden you see them a couple months later and they're walking the gym with this confidence and saying hey to everybody and laughing. And it's beautiful to see. So this small thing of just improving your health choice, whether it's the moving more or the eating better, right, or taking on this new skill, this confidence in whatever you're doing is going to ripple out into the rest of your life. The next thing is that you and Rita kind of touched on this, is that physical activity with others. So thinking about physical activity in a community can actually improve your sense of community and social support. And what's interesting about this is research. We're taking a successful, Dr. Besner did a presentation on successful aging. And we talk about well-being and kind of all the aspects that go into successful aging. And one of those things is we find that people that are able to age better and maintain their health longer as they age are typically surrounded by family or friends or some sort of community, and they're not aging alone. I was listening to a podcast the other day and he was talking about how loneliness is actually they're doing a lot of studies on loneliness now because people are kind of hiding behind screens now and we're experiencing a lot more loneliness. Especially people aren't going into work anymore, they're working remotely. And loneliness is very dangerous to the health, and we're meant to be social creatures. And so if you can find a way to do these healthy choices in a community, even better, more bang for your buck. And this doesn't even have to just be physical activity. Let's say you find a cool cooking class and you want to learn some more really interesting recipes. Go to a cooking class with a group of people. You'll probably meet some new people and you can all start a recipe thread of like healthy recipes you're making this week. So again, expand this beyond just physical activity. This can go for any, new health choice you decide to do. The other interesting thing is that we find that it can strengthen your self-esteem and self-efficacy. This kind of goes back to this motor competence we had talked about. When you start to see that you have these capabilities and these things that maybe you didn't realize you could do before, this confidence and this self-esteem builds, and you start to be more confident in your, beliefs that you can do things in your life. And you're like, you know what? I lifted that 25-pound weight. So you know what else I can do? And again, the ripple effect is just incredible. And then the exercise also has this kind of protection. So it can protect you against stress-related strains. This could be stress-related strains on yourself, which could manifest into like mental health problems like anxiety and depressive issues, irritability, these kind of things. And this also can ripple out into others in your life. So again, if we're showing up as our best self and setting our brain up right, then we are showing up as better people to those around us. And I heard a really interesting thing about relationships are essentially a system. So you both bring a part to the system. So if you're constantly showing up as irritable and you're constantly moody and you're constantly showing up as, maybe quick-tempered and you can't handle problems very well, the system that you have with your coworkers or the system that you have with your husband, your wife, your significant other, your kids, that system is going to be really strained. Whereas if you're showing up to work and you're quick and you're on it and you're problem solving well and you're feeling good and you're feeling positive and you're showing up as your best self, that influences the system and the relationship that you're having with the people in your system. And so that's going to promote healthy relationships. It's going to promote those kind of social pact you have with your coworkers or classmates and people in your life with your loved ones. So, the example kind of we had talked about is grad school and the strain that grad school has on relationships. And we talk about this day one. Dr. Besner, I think, was the one that warned us about this, like warn those in your life that like, you are going through a lot of stress and you may show up maybe not as your best self because you are under a lot of stress and you're managing a lot. And it has an impact on those around you because it's a system, and who you show up every day is directly impacting that system. So just something to think about.
Okay. So now thinking back to, the recurring day-to-day challenge or challenges you've identified earlier, what's one positive health choice you can make this week, yes, this week, that will prepare you to navigate through these challenges? So one positive health choice that you can make this week that will better prepare you to navigate through these challenges. And then you can put them in the chat. Go to bed early enough to allow more sleep. Nice. Don't skip the exercise. Yes.
Dedicating time to be mindful and present. I like that.
Yep.
It's a hard one. We did a health coaching conversation, and my challenge to myself was not taking out my phone in my car. Like when I'm at a light, my first instinct is like take out my phone and start looking at things. And the amount of peace that has brought me has been crazy. So I feel you, Austin. I am with you on that 100%.
Allow myself a little quiet time. Indeed. Indeed. Okay. So how confident are you that you can accomplish your goal this week? And if you're able to do it this week, what makes you confident? Please share.
And if you want to, you can do like a 1 out of 10. Like I'm an 8 that I'll be able to do this week.
Yep. Probably 7. 7? Okay. And to those who've entered a 7, what can you do to possibly get to a 10? 10 out of 10. Cute, let's work towards a 10, okay. Scheduled activity. I need to tell someone. Okay. So some accountability, okay.
And then conversely to that, like what, if you gave it a 7, if there's a lot of 7s and 8s, like, why not a 2 or a 3? Like give yourself some credit there. Why aren't you rating it low? There's obviously a belief that you can do this. So what about it that you can do this? Nice. So I think that's pretty common. Like maybe you've done it before, it's attainable. It's just going to take that discipline, or like Austin was saying, maybe that accountability buddy to just check in with you and make sure you get it done. I like that.
Okay. So for those who don't really feel as confident, what are some potential barriers that are in your way? So maybe work, some aching pains. Okay. Any other potential barriers?
And even if you're not comfortable sharing, if you're writing your goal down, like I think I saw Rastara was writing a goal down, which is huge. There's huge power in writing it down. And that's research backed. Write your barriers next to it. Like, be realistic with yourself. What's going to come in your way? Expect it, see it before it happens. All right. So thank you to everybody that participated. I know sometimes over Zoom there's a lag and it's kind of weird, but we do appreciate your support and the input and the engagement. And we love that you all are here and taking your time to be with us today. So thank you again for sharing and being vulnerable to sharing. So we really appreciate you. So quick recap of what we talked about today. So the daily health choices to be mindful of moving forward is just consider every day, like, what am I doing to move? How am I feeling myself? So the old saying, you are what you eat, right? So we're alive beings. We need to eat live things. If we eat a lot of dead things and a lot of processed things, we're going to feel accordingly. We kind of feel empty and we kind of feel dead inside. So eat alive things to promote being alive. Brain recovery, like Austin was saying, what are you doing in a day to just put the phone down? Like I said, for me, it was not touching my phone on my drive home. It was a really bad habit I got into of just anytime I got at a light or a stop sign or whatever I knew was going to be stopped for an extended period of time, stuck on 35, I'd pull out my phone. So what can you do just to chill out, relax your brain, let yourself be bored, be okay with being bored. It's a good thing. It's good for your brain. And then how's your sleep? What are you doing for sleep? Can you start to slowly push back your bedtime if you're able to do that? And don't push it back dramatically. Push it back 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes earlier than normal. Slowly work your way back to a sleep goal. Optimize your sleep. Are you in a cool room? Do you have the fan on? That kind of thing. Is it dark? Then we talked about the long-term effects. So Vita kind of did a recap of our previous conversation where we talked about the long-term effects. And we had talked about specifically long-term effects of physical activity because that's what our last presentation was on. But a lot of those things, nutrition plays a huge part in those things, and sleep maintenance plays a huge part in those things as well. So although it was physical activity based, just know that those long-term effects are true for a lot of other health choices. So those are probably most common. We talked about, like, in the mainstream media and kind of what you hear is those long-term effects, the scary chronic diseases you could get. But we really today wanted to talk about how it could be showing up for you day to day. Brandon got into the poor health daily choices, or how poor daily health choices can exacerbate life's challenges. So again, what kind of person are you showing up as today? Are you fully optimized? Or are you showing up, with sort of decreased, your brain's just not fully on, you kind of feel decreased cognitive abilities, you're problem solving, you're not as quick, decreased mood regulation, you're irritable, you're cranky, you're sad, you're tired, you're fatigued, decreased relationship and stress management. Again, we talked about how the person you show up as and the person you're showing up as each day is going to directly impact those around you. And then it's directly impacting how you manage the stressors in your life. So again, the example of, you could have a small thing happen at work, and if you're not showing up fully ready to go and your brain's not kind of firing on all cylinders, maybe that stressful event becomes this huge thing for you, and it becomes just ruins your day. Whereas if you had shown up really ready to go, fully slept, feeling really good, maybe you kind of let that thing roll off your shoulder and you would have handled it a little bit better. So again, the positive daily health choices, they can really set us up for success. They can totally change our day. We have improved cognitive abilities. We have improved mood regulation, which improves our relationships and our stress management and how we handle those stressors that come up in our life. And then finally, we took that deeper dive into physical activity and exercise. And we talked about how, the more well-known benefits of physical activity and exercise being the physical health benefits. And then we took a little bit deeper dive into the other things that maybe lesser well known. So its impact on stress and its impact on social and mental and brain health. So we open it up to you. Any questions for us before you all leave? I know some of you probably got to get going, but we are here. Feel free to ask us a question.
My question was in, I don't know if you can hear me. My question was in the chat. Oh.
Was it about the copy of the presentation?
Yes.
Yes, I think Josh is posting a link. It's also on the WellCats website under education and what was it?
Resources.
Education resources. Josh may have to hop off and let me know.
Yeah, education resources.
Okay, got it. Awesome. Thanks, Lynn. Thank you all for being here again. It's been really awesome to have you all here and your interaction. We've very much enjoyed it. So again, we'll hang around for questions. Other than that, we are done. So you guys have a great rest of your day. What healthy choices are you going to make today?
Stick to the goals. Discipline starts today.